Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. We're going to be removing this patio area, replacing it with stamped concrete. We're going to do pretty much the same shape that it's in now. Also, we're going to replace that post because of that raised little concrete. It's a little pilaster, you know, those precast you can get at Home Depot. That's basically kind of what it's setting on. So I'm going to get that flush mounted with a stirrup. Also, we're going to be doing this side yard here. We're going to be doing, instead of that little like 4-inch gap, we're going to do a 10-inch along the block wall, because that continues all the way around the entire back property line. 10-inch space just for water runoff. Also decorative, because they're going to put round rock along the perimeter. So my little 3-foot wide Vermeer skid steer fit in here real nicely. So I'm breaking a little bit beyond this gate because I got a set of form there, because I'm pouring everything in stages on this particular job site. Like this is on some previous parts to this series, we did the backyard and some planter beds and stuff like that. So those spaces in between, you can see how they're in sections. It was most likely redwood 2x4 dividers poured in place. But since this was put in, the wood completely rotted out. So that's why you have those gaps now. And the concrete's coming out really easily. No reinforcement, and it's hollow underneath it because at some point there was a large tree around here, and the roots all decomposed, and then the dirt settled, and now you've got hollow voids. The step's gonna stay in there as is. They've already did some work on that, and they had it stained. We're going to be using a pebble integral from Davis on this, and then we're going to use Belgian slate seamless texture stamp. I will be putting some base in here. There's no base currently in here, and it did fine on the native, but because I'm changing the elevation somewhat, I'm going to go ahead and put a few inches of base in. That entire driveway will be coming out as well. Also on the public works, we're going to be removing and replacing the apron approach as well. And that particular portion required a permit, but you'll get to see that in the next video. The driveway and approach, even meet the inspector. See all those sprinkler valves? They're all coming out, and they're plumbed in, you know, with copper. But there was a valve, so I just cut it, you know, on the other side of the valve. The valve closes it off. I remove all those sprinkler valves because there's no more irrigation on this particular product, because they have artificial turf out in the front, and then this little garden that's going to remain, it'll be hand watered. And it's succulents, and they're established, so you know, once you get a succulent established, there's very little watering to do. There's the old post. I could have used that post over, but it's too short now because it was jacked up on that raised pier, you know, and I really didn't like the looks of it, so I removed it. I got to get a hole through that wall right there, and I have a new tool just to do that with. This drain, just with daylight's basically on the other side of that block wall, and catch any runoff from the backyard, and it'll take it out here. I'm going to take this all the way down. Eventually the driveway will come out. Alright, we got the new DeWalt tool. I just started it out here on this wall. This is the first time I've used it. Brand new core bit, 3-inch. It's actually 3 9/16. But yeah, it's blowing through it like real quick. Look, here's the chunks of concrete that came out with it, so it's solid grouted. Now we're on the other side of the wall. There's the hole we just went through, solid grout wall. That would have powered through steel. I believe it had that much power to it. Now, what we're gonna have to do, because the footing's higher on this side of the wall than the other side, we're gonna just use, we just switch bits on this. We just put the chisel bit on it. Now we're gonna see how it does on chiseling. It's got the 60-volt battery in it. Let's see what it can do. What'd that feel like?
Powerhouse,
Did you feel like
man.
you had the power?
Oh yeah, easily.
That's
That was
sweet.
pretty good though. No.
Okay, I'm gonna go back on the other side, push through.
Okay.
Here, hold that on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the drain's through, and that tool's a nice addition to my fleet. And I can't wait to use it on a, some A curve or L curve going through. See how it works on solid concrete. You know, because grout in walls is sometimes a little softer, depends who's grouting it, but usually it's not the high PSI stuff, and it's not the big rock like you'd have in your straight curb and gutter. So I think it'll do the trick. I'm going to try it out eventually. So right now we compact the native, because like I said, we had all those hollow voids from decomposing roots and stuff. So we have to compact native. It got disturbed a little bit, so tighten it up, and then throw base, and then compact that as well. On that bender board on that patio side yard, that's some plastic formwork that I've been using over and over for the last year or longer, actually. It's great for radiuses. You can see how few stakes I put in there. Yeah, so with other types of bender material that I've used for formwork, you have to use probably twice as many stakes to hold that shape. You know, when the concrete hits it, it starts kind of moving around, but this stuff's pretty rigid. And if you see that tight radius on the left there, you know how I got that? Typically this stuff won't bend that tight of a radius, but what I did is I heated it up with a blowtorch a little bit, got it nice and hot, and then I bent it around there, and it worked like a charm. Here's where the new post is going to go. I'm going to put a post bracket in here, and then we'll pour around the post bracket. I'll preset the post bracket in just some bag mix. Here's the bag mix. I'm going to go ahead and set it, get that fixed in position, plumb bob down from the overhead. I'm just using my chalk line as a plumb bob. Some chalk lines aren't going to work for this, but this particular one is designed so that it works as a plumb bob. And now I can pour the whole slab around this. I don't have to mess with a post stirrup and trying to work over wet concrete. I know it's in the right place now, and then I can go ahead and focus on what, you know, the finish work of the concrete. So every pour I've done on this job was 9 or 10 yards. I staged it so I had basically a load on every pour. And this was the side yard and that front patio, 9 yards. And it's got the pebble integral in there from Davis. And we're going to stamp everything with a liquid clear release Belgian slate. You can see just the edge of what we already did in the backyard. That's what this, you can see how dark it is when it goes down wet, and that's how much it lightens up over a few weeks. Well, when the wet look sealer goes back on there, it brings it back up, enhances the color, protects the finish. Wands on the rod, and I'm using a 5th wheel hook to pull up that reinforcement as we go out. Hit it with the 3-foot wide bull float, and then we'll follow that up with big blue right behind it, because we're not going to get a lot of chances to go over this because it's kind of hard to get to area. Now we're on the front patio area. The reinforcement we're using is 3/8 inch diameter pink bar made by Owens Corning. Also, I added fiber mesh into the load upon its arrival on the job site. Here's Tyler running a 1/2 inch radius edge. Over here on the left, that was also known, his name, we call him Flash, because what happened on a different job site from what he was telling me is that he was in an industrial location pouring some concrete, old industrial, where they had overhead wires, you know, electrical, and he had 3 poles, aluminum poles, and he was running one of his tools, a joiner or something like that, and he hit that overhead wire, and all the insulation had already fallen off of it over the years, and he got zapped pretty good. So that's his new nickname, Flash. And he was lucky, nothing was really wrong other than he had a burn mark in his hand where the charge went in, and then he had another burn mark at the bottom of his foot where it went out. So that's why when you're using aluminum poles, you got to always look overhead and be aware of your surroundings at all times. They do have a fiberglass pole, although the circumference of them is a lot larger, so they're harder to grasp. But you know, that's something to consider too. We started to stamp it, but it seemed like it was just a little too early, so we gave it a little more time. If you notice the way that I'm stamping, I have a specific pattern that I run. That way I never miss a spot. Because if you miss a spot on any of your mats, you're going to see it down the road. An area that doesn't have texture, especially when you're using two-tone, you'll really notice it. In this case, it's not as obvious. You can get away with a lot of stuff. But so you want to really make sure that you know where you left off when you move a mat when you're pounding. Know which ones you hit. And you really don't want to double stamp any area because then you get a completely different texture. So it looked pretty simple, you know, to stamp, but there's really actually a lot to it. So this is the next day, and we're just laying out saw cuts where we're going to have the control joints at. And what these joints do, basically it creates a weakened plane joint in the concrete, an area that's thinner than the rest of the concrete. So if the concrete does want to crack, it cracks in those spots because it's weaker. Instead of just random cracking that's uncontrolled, these help control cracking. We're using the Medusa saw from Skill, and I have the DeWalt cordless vacuum, and I just set it on a furniture roller, and it just kind of follows me around wherever I go. While I'm pressure washing, I just go ahead and hit the whole side of the house at the same time. So when it's wet right there, when the wet look sealer goes on it, it's pretty much going to always look just like it does right now. As we were stamping through this, if any of the joints had closed up on us, we have a chisel on us to reopen those joints as we go. Notice how the saw cut is straight with the porch to the next turn. That's all in the formwork layout, so you get straight cuts to all your corners. Here's the new post, and since we were over 8 feet, we ended up getting a 12-footer because We couldn't find any other sizes, so we got some excess post, which might work in the raised planter bed in the backyard for, I don't know, maybe holding some vines or something, potentially. So we got it in here initially. It was a little long. It's better to cut them long than short, you know. So you can always take more off, but it's hard to add to them. So that other 2x4, I used that as a wedge and kind of a jack as well. So I rammed that in there to bring up that beam, and then slipped in the 6x6, and now it's tight. And I use galvanized nails at the top, 3-inch galvies at the top, and then this particular post bracket came with the screws, so that's what's getting put in there, 8 on each side, and that's pretty solid. Anyway, stay tuned for the next part, because that's going to be the driveway, and then following that we're going to do the off-site public works. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks for watching.